O'Reilly. Are your wiper blades chattering, skipping, or squeaking? Don't let streaks or smearing on your windshield compromise your visibility. When it's time to replace your wiper blades, stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts and see our selection. Our professional parts people will even install your new wiper blades while you wait. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today. O'Reilly Auto Parts.
You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Hunting Collective. I'm Ben O'Brien, and it's a good one. It's a very good one. Here, as April rounds out, turkey season is, in the West at least, in full swing. I am in the Black Hills of South Dakota with my good friend Sam Soholt. We are hunting turkeys, we are telling stories, and we are talking about turkey genitalia. Big news, some big news regarding turkey genitalia in this podcast. So stay tuned for that. But we'll also tell you a little bit about our successful turkey hunt here in the Black Hills, his turkey tour, my turkey tour, his public land bus, and more. I'm also joined by Alex and Libby Metcalf. You'll hear more about them in the podcast. They're interesting folks. They're both professors in the forestry department there at the University of Montana in Missoula. They do a lot of interesting things around human interaction and behavior in regards to hunting. So we're going to learn a lot about that. It's a really interesting conversation, and I learned a lot. So I thank those guys, and you'll hear that very soon. But before we get to that, we're going to talk to you about a new partner for the program, and that partner is... it's really not new at all, but we're going to treat it as new because it's official. I want to welcome a new partner on the program, and that's Yeti. We used to say Yeti coolers, but now it's Yeti because they make so much more than just coolers. And I'm sure everyone listening to this, or most of you, will know that I was employed at one time by Yeti. And really, I owe a lot of where I am today, what I've been able to do with my life, and all the blessings I have to that company. And to the people like Roy and Ryan Cedars, who you've heard on this podcast previously. So you'll be hearing a lot from those guys on this podcast in the future. But I just want to let everyone know that as we've announced other partners, when I announced them as an official partner of the podcast, and I'm very thankful for them. Again, have played a large part in marketing their products, but I believe even outside of that, even outside of being part of the organization, I believe in their products. I believe in what they stand for. I believe in their films and their content, and most of all, their people. And so you'll be hearing, again, a lot more from them in the weeks and months to come, and I'm very lucky to have Yeti on board. So shout out to everybody down in Austin, Texas. So without further ado, let's get started.
I guess I grew up on an old dirt road, a pedal to the metal, always did what I was told. Until I found out that my brand new clothes came secondhand from the rich kids next door. And I grew up fast, I guess I grew up mean. There's 1,000 things inside my head I wish I ain't seen. And now I just wander through a real bad dream, or feeling like I'm coming apart at the seams. But thank you, Jack Daniels, oh, number 7.
Hey, everyone. I'm Ben O'Brien, and it is 4/30/19. Man, April got away from us fast. But it's going to be another good show today. And I'm joined right now by my good friend Sam Soholt, man of public land bus fame. Sam, it is your third or fourth time on the podcast? Is that correct?
Yeah, something like that.
First in the new format. So welcome to. It's so different, right?
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, you don't even know what's happening right now.
No, I don't.
As I like to start all these, describe, Sam, where we are currently.
So we are in the Black Hills of South Dakota, chasing Merriam's turkeys. We're currently, a little bit more specific, we're currently sitting in my bus. We've got a pot of coffee brewing. It's kind of spitting rain a little bit outside. A little afternoon shower is rolling in. And, but yeah, it's just been beautiful weather out here in the Black Hills, and everybody's been in turkeys and got a few on the ground already.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's only
everywhere
day
you
2.
go, this seems to be a dead turkey.
Yeah, I really enjoyed turkey hunting, and this spring has been a good one. I've been, I think we were talking about this morning. I left for the spring turkey tour on March 27th, and today it is the 24th of April. So I am 24 days consecutively into my actual turkey hunting.
And you need a nap.
I need a nap. I'm completely exhausted.
And as evidence of your tour, I look across the bus here, and I guess what you'd call like the kitchen area. I don't think this is up to code because there is a number of turkey feet sticking out of like a sideboard in the bus. Probably, 10 feet at least?
Yeah, I think there are 5 sets of feet in there.
Yeah, sticking creepily.
Yeah, there's just the claws are sticking up there with all the tags on them. So it's a little weird. It's it's kind of nightmarish, but
that's fine.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was better than having like we got here and they were all just like tucked in a corner, and I was like, well, I don't really want to leave a bunch of turkey feet just laying on the floor. So
no, it's nice. It shows you guys have had a good damn tour and a good week this week. But before we get to, we're going to tell some turkey stories in the interview portion of the show. Today, you're going to hear from Alex and Libby Metcalf, who are a couple of professors from the University of Montana there in Missoula. And so we'll get to them in a second. They aren't turkey hunters. Hopefully, listen to this. Maybe we'll convince them to go. But we're going to tell some turkey stories. But first, we had a thing in the woods this morning where we were wondering something that I think every turkey hunter thinks they know about, but probably doesn't know much about. And Sam and I were trying to Google it with little to no service. And what we were Googling was turkey genitalia.
Which at like 6 a.m., like in the middle of the woods, is a weird thing to be looking up.
That's just a weird thing to be talking about. And recording yourself talking about turkey genitalia is not so great. But here we are. We both decided that we didn't really know, and had never, having dismembered many turkeys, had never really run into a turkey's penis in our time taking turkeys apart and hunting turkeys. We all hunt the turkey rut, as we'll call it. We all hunt the turkey rut. We're always doing that. But for whatever reason, we don't ever think about the actual act of mating. We think about, hens laying eggs and sitting in the nest, but we don't ever really think about, at least that's my guess, a lot of people don't actually think about the act of mating for turkeys.
Yeah, I would guess not very often. I mean, other than like setting up decoys, which are my buddy who's a non-hunter described as turkey sex dolls.
They are very sexy.
But setting them up basically looking like a Tom or a Jake is about to breed a hen or like, close to breeding a hen. So that's usually in the context in which we look at it. But yeah, now I haven't spent a lot of time in the past years thinking about how it actually all goes down.
Yeah. And I said, we may have seen videos of turkeys mating, but have seen turkeys try to mate with my decoys. But I've never seen them doing their thing in the wild. And so I did a little research, a little reading to educate everyone on, following the courtship dance, which we're very familiar with. The act of mating, and I'm going to read a little bit of this. The male, you kind of can picture the male hopping on the female. The Tom hops on his lady, kind of lets his wings down and gets ready for the thing. But the thing that I didn't know is that the sperm is transferred from the male's cloaca to the female's cloaca.
So they both basically, I have heard it described as like a general opening,
Yes.
which is an easier way than saying cloaca. But
This says like the cloaca is a name for the vent that leads to the turkey's sex organs. So they put their cloacas together, and that acts as a sort of a channel in which to
a conduit, if you
copulate,
will.
a conduit for copulation. So the turkeys, they'll place their vents next to each other in order to allow the transfers of sperm. So now we know. Mm-hmm. The more you know.
The more you know.
That little rainbow star thing.
Yeah. So all of you listening out there, it's good. You have an understanding, a better understanding of turkey genitalia.
Sex.
Turkey sex. That
like
started off weird.
You know, I'd like to say you're welcome to the listenership, but I think we just forced this on them. They probably didn't want it.
Probably not, but I hope that they're
I think of it as
interested
a
enough
public
where it like
service.
really hooked them into
It's
listening to the rest of it.
Public service.
That's right.
Now you know. So moving on, you're a South Dakota native.
I am.
So you've killed in your life many a turkey.
So I mean, I've killed some turkeys, but I actually didn't start turkey hunting until 2012.
Oh,
was
wow.
the first year. So I didn't grow up doing it. Never put in for tags. I just chased waterfowl and deer, and it wasn't until quite recently that I got way more into it.
Well, and you've revved the engine, being on a 3-week-long turkey tour.
Yes.
Going from that to that.
Yeah.
And
So I've got
7 years.
Yeah. Doing this. I got 4 more days here, helping just shoot photos and helping guys get birds. And then I've got one archery hunt in eastern South Dakota that I'm going to try to pull off. And then towards the end of May, I'm meeting up with the Vortex guys, the Hush guys, Born and Raised, and the hunting public. And we're all going to chase birds in Wisconsin for one more grand finale on the year.
Well done. Yeah, no, I'm on my own little tour. It's not quite as long as yours. I don't have a bus, and my wife would probably leave me if I went for that long. But she knows I want to, and she knows if I could, I would. We did a little Texas, and then took a tour break. Is it a tour if it takes a break?
I think you can take a tour break. I don't know if you can consider it I feel like Texas was a trip, and now you're on a tour.
Oh,
Like you did
it was like a pre-tour trip. I give you that. Did this hunt? I'm going to go back to Montana, hunt in eastern Montana, drive down to Idaho to do the BHA rendezvous. So if you're, by the time you hear this, it's already over. So it was a great time. I had a great time. And then we'll be, about the time this airs, we'll be rolling over to Idaho to do a couple of days hunting. Well, I think the Hush guys will be in camp there with me, and possibly even Brian Callahan will make an appearance. And then I'll be rolling up to Oregon with Benchmade and Federal to do some running around, and then back to Montana to hunt up in northern Montana, fill another tag, and then back to Bozeman.
That's a pretty solid tour in a short period of time.
It's a lot of miles. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's quite the. It's like a hunt and then a 10-hour drive, and then a hunt and a 10-hour drive. But living in the West, I mean, you can do it in the East too. But if you really want to see the West, the Intermountain West, I mean, this is a damn good way to do it.
For sure. And a really cool time of year to do it. Like everything's waking back up, and I don't know. Like I love the fall because it's all hunting season, but there's something about spring that is just awesome.
Yeah, this time of year for sure.
Yeah.
How much Black Hills history do you have in your head there? Any big?
Not much. I grew up on the east side of the state.
So this is like a different.
Yeah, like I've traveled out here for sports and different trips or whatever, but never. I don't know much about the Black Hills. I probably should know more.
I learned that it was it was named the Black Hills. There's the Lakota tribe thought because there's so many pine trees on the hills that they look black, and that's why it was named the Black Hills.
That makes sense.
That's about as much as I got.
Yeah.
But it was also Custer made like a Black Hills. He made a big trip that was written about a lot here to the Black Hills, which popularized the area, and then the gold rush kind of found its way here, and for the preceding decades, it was very mining centric, extraction centric. But now it seems to be tourism centric.
Yes,
for sure.
Yeah,
and for good reason.
Yeah, it's just a really cool area. Even though it's become, it's still not that populated out here. I mean, there's there's a lot of room to roam and a ton of public land out here. And just like, like the amount of wildlife that you see, whether it be turkeys or deer or bison or elk or whatever. I mean, just on our drive to go hunt this morning, we saw whitetail, mule deer, bison, elk, and then finally turkeys.
Yeah. Not to call anybody out, but a member of your party that you've gathered here. You have a lot of people in camp. Mm-hmm. You're very popular. Member of your party. We're not going to say who it was. Came back. It's not from... Doesn't spend a lot of time out west.
Yeah.
It's a good hunter, but doesn't spend a lot of time out west. Came back and was like politely asking what bear shit looked like.
Well, first he asked, are there bears out here?
And that's a long way to get around.
Yeah. And I said, yeah, I mean, not a lot, but there are bears out here. And he goes, I'm pretty sure we saw a bunch of bear shit. It's like, well, what? Then you asked, well, what did it look like? Or was it pellets? I think,
Yeah, no, I said, well, yeah, bear shit, it looks a little bit like human shit. And you'll see a lot, you said something like you'll see a lot of berries. And I said, well, was it, he's like, yeah, but it didn't kind of look like that. I said, was it pellets? He's like, yeah, like big pellets.
That was definitely elk.
That's elk shit.
So they did run into a pile of elk, like a lot of elk shit.
And so there's a lot of, I say all that to say there's a lot of elk out here.
Yeah. Well, the best is that he asked another guy who's not from out west, and that guy told him that
was my favorite part. He was like, the dude I was with was like, oh, that's for sure bear shit. 100%. 100% bear shit.
Yeah.
I can't believe there's herds of bears roaming the South Dakota hills. It's unbelievable.
That's terrifying out here.
The Black Hills National Forest. Herds of bears. Yep. 12 deep. But yeah, I mean, you had a big camp out here. It's cool to be a part of. And we got to roam around the Black Hills National Forest. Now, we're not going to give any hot spots away. But I did ask Alex and Libby Metcalf to give some hot spots away at the end of the show. So you will get a hot spot. Kind of a half-assed hot spot, but nonetheless, you'll get one. But just describing how we approached this morning and how I approached just coming over here from Montana. Literally just looked at my Onyx maps, looked where it was green for National Forest, and drove around and got out where I thought turkeys might be and called, hiked in a little bit, called. Nothing there. Go back in the truck, drive a little more, cover a ton of country, glassing for birds, calling, trying to get a response. And that's like is as free as a hunter gets. And millions of acres here for us to traverse. And little to no, other than little small pockets of residential areas and private land and some other controlled access points, we were free to roam.
Yeah. So last year was my first year hunting turkeys in the Black Hills, and kind of was asking around, like what are some good areas to go look? And a buddy of mine was like, man, just everywhere. Like the turkeys are fairly evenly distributed throughout the hills. So he's like, if it looks like good turkey country, there's chances turkeys in there. So just get out, call, like you said on your way in. It's like if it looks like good turkey country, there's probably going to be a turkey, and they may or may not respond, but there's probably going to be some birds in there, and it's a good way to do it, just to locate some critters.
Yeah, and I was thinking about going to BHA Rendezvous, being a part of that. Both, we're in the public land bus, like we both. It is something that we both, and we're not alone, like care a whole lot about. It's like, we'll tell the story of this bird we killed, but after we had killed this turkey this morning, we had like a 3-hour session of just sitting in the national forest, drinking a beer, chopping up a turkey, having lunch, listening to music,
took a
nap. It's like, and we don't own that land. Like, we didn't pay for it, at least, except for with our taxes.
Yeah. No, that was pretty amazing.
It's the idea that that's accessible is still stuns me, even though it's something that I've devoted a lot of time and energy and a big part of my life to. It still brings me great joy and passion to know that exists. And it's every time that I do it, I feel that way.
I think what always gets me is it's just hard for me when I start to really sit down and think about it, like how much land there is and how freely accessible it is. It's just hard for me to wrap my head around. Like today, we probably covered, let's say 40 acres, maybe 40 to 60 acres of ground. there's 640 million acres of just federally managed land. So, like, just trying to wrap your head around like how much exploring you can do, like, without any cost other than, a hunting license. But if you're just hiking or whatever, just being able to go out and use that as a resource is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I can't, like, that idea, and again, I was texting with Lance Harney from BHA this morning. I was like, dude, I just want to tell you that idea, above politics, above all our disagreements around the government and its workings, like, above that, like, there's nothing that I've experienced, the combination of hunting, which I love, with the freedom of running around in a place that you contribute to and also benefit from in a way that is indescribable for me if somebody's never experienced it, is just, like I said, every time that I do it, I get something else from it. Never gets old, ever. Doesn't matter where I am. Turkeys, elk, deer, squirrels, doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. And it's great. It's great. It's raining outside.
It is.
You hear that? Last time you were on the bus, I think, for the podcast, it was raining, weren't you?
It was. We were actually in the Black Hills.
South Dakota.
Yeah.
In the Black Hills.
We were, actually, I think I was on one in Big Sky, but the one previous, we were in the Black Hills, and it was pouring, and there was flooding in the awning.
In the awning of the public land bus. And it was crazy. Well, we're going to get to the interview portion of the show here in a minute, but we're also going to tell you the story of this turkey we killed this morning. I've been here. I rolled in last night. Like you said, just rolling through. Stopped, got my license, got my tag, made sure all that was square. Came rolling through the Black Hills. Literally just driving around, calling. Found a bird. Roosted them. There was a couple, like 2 or 3 gobblers and a group of hens that I had roosted. Marked them on the old Onyx maps. Came back here. Had some beers, had a little food, went to sleep, slept for about three damn hours, got up at 3:30, pulled out of here at 4 a.m., rolled over to our spot, and they were exactly where we left them. And I thought, you can tell me, Sam, but I thought we were in the money.
Yeah. I mean, looking at the map and everything, it seemed like we were in the right spot, like a crossroad between like a little track trail and a cut through the timber, so it was like a good area for them to pitch down to and strut down.
Yeah, it was the cross section of a little trail and then a power line. Mm-hmm. And so we were kind of right at the X of that. So we put our decoys out. We were, like I said, a couple hundred yards from the roost tree. They were hammering on the roost. We had them responding a little bit as they were starting to fly down, and they hit the ground. And they weren't totally quiet when they hit the ground, but they certainly didn't fly in our direction. They pitched off away from us to a bench that we later discovered that was would have been to our north. And then they're gobbling instead of 200 yards away, probably 350, 400 yards away. Which, if you're a turkey hunter, you understand that disappointment. Like you go to sleep thinking about having them pitch off, see the decoys come running in, and you crack them.
Yeah, I mean, like the textbook hunt is you just get in tight under the roost and they just fly on down right to you.
And bam.
Yeah.
You had one where its feet barely hit the ground.
I didn't even have any decoys out, and he pitched down. This was last Wednesday, a week ago. Pitched down, and he had not even slowed down yet from his landing run, and I shot him. So that hunt lasted from about 5 seconds from fly down to flopping.
We did pretty good today, but we're not that lucky.
Yeah. They pitched off to the north, to which later, both seeing it in person and then looking at the map, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. They should be. That's where they would fly.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's again the disadvantage to not knowing the terrain in the country. If we had hunted those birds for a couple of days or hunted this area, we would have kind of seen that country and known, hey, when they pitch off, they're going to pitch to this bench, and then from that bench they can access this little field. It's a little private area, like a private. So we were kind of butting up against this piece of private where we thought either a water trough or a feeder or something that the turkeys like to hit. And so, my thought in the morning was they're going to, either fly that way or pitch down to this power line and access this anywhere they want to go from this area. So they pitched down, and we decided to go up on the ridge above them, and you tell them why. Why do you think that getting above turkeys in this mountain, this mountainous terrain is a big deal?
So if you can get above the turkeys, it's a lot easier to call them in. And actually, I just learned this year because I've never hunted. I mean, other than last year hunting out here a little bit, but just kind of winging it. But hanging out with the guys from the hunting public and hunting, mountainous areas like Arkansas and some more hilly terrain down in Tennessee. Just like Aaron Warburton, I hunted with him a lot for those first 2 weeks, and he just kept kind of driving into my head that if you're going to go try to call in a turkey in hilly terrain, you want to try to get above them. Because if they're having to come up over a rise, they're going to come further in searching, because if you get downhill of them and try to call them in, turkeys have such good eyesight that when they're coming down in, like if you have decoys, it's one thing, but still like they're their eyesight's so good that they're easily going to see what's going on ahead of them way further. So if you can kind of take away some of their advantage and get above them, they'll come marching right up to you.
Yeah, man, I think it makes all the sense in the world. And having hunted turkeys, I mean, you've done it in the last 3 weeks, but you hunt turkeys in all these different, you see how they use terrain, you kind of learn to read where they're going to go. And I think both of us kind of today made a bunch of really good calls about like, this is where they're going to go. Let's set up here. They're going to want to use this spine to come to access this open spot. If we put the decoys here, they'll see them first, pull them in. And it's good to know, like when you make that guess right and then the turkey does what it needs to do, then the turkey dies.
Right.
What we did was make a lot of right guesses. It's the turkey's fault.
Yeah, I blame them. Anytime it goes wrong, it's always their fault.
If they would have been where they were supposed to be, we would have been just fine.
Yeah, because then when we looped up to get above them, both of us were looking at the map and looking down and saw the bench where eventually we spotted them. But we were looking at that like, oh, let's get to that bench and set up and call again, because like they're going to use it. All those ridges were all scratched up. I mean, tons of turkey sign in that whole thing. So assuming that flock of turkeys was just bouncing around in there day after day using that area.
Yeah, and it was really, I thought it was a kind of a micro area that they were running in, and they had it circled like a NASCAR race. I mean, it just looked kind of like they were just using the same kind of 3 fingers of a ridge to travel. And so, yeah, I mean, we looked at like, if we can just get down to near that bench, they're going to either end up there or come off the field and hit us. If we call, we'll call them in. Well, we got, maybe 100 yards above that bench, and I'd set my shotgun down to get the call out, to hit it to see if we get them to respond. And I look up, and there goes the neighborhood.
So it turns out they were all hanging out on that exact bench.
They were exactly where we thought they were.
Yep.
They just were there too soon.
Yes.
And so it is their fault.
Yeah.
It's their fault we didn't kill.
Some may also say that we were there too late.
Those people would be wrong.
Yeah.
They weren't there. They didn't. It's up to us to decide. No, I mean, yeah, it's, if you're a veteran turkey hunter, you understand this scenario. It's like the run and gun, the sit and get type of attitude. Like you could know that bench is great and get 500 yards from it and sit and just call for the next 3 hours, or you could bump up in there, get tight with them. And if you're going to bump around and get tight with them, you're going to spook them every once in a while. And for us too, we didn't know it. We had those birds. Like we had all day to hunt, and we knew where those birds were. And so if we, knowing and you wake up, if we squeak those birds, it literally is starting over again, like we weren't even here. So we did exactly that.
And yeah, we accomplished all that by 6:20.
And I got to say, shout out to Mike and Ike's.
Yes.
Not a sponsor.
No.
But, I mean, hit me up, Mike and Ike's.
Yeah. Came in clutch.
We drowned our sorrows in an entire box of fucking Mike and Ike's.
I mean, I'm a snack guy for sure. And so I always have something in my bag. And after we buggered those turkeys up, we just sat down on the hillside and shared a box.
The whole box.
Whole shareable size box of Mike and Ike's.
6:45 a.m.
That's good. It's good to get that going.
That's turkey hunting for you, folks. That's turkey hunting for you. Now, I want to make a detour to something that another thing that we discovered. And this we can call this segment not a sponsor. That's the segment. We had what I'll call a revelation after we shot this turkey and we were having a meal. We discovered this thing called O-meals.
Yeah.
O-Meals. Tell people about O-Meals. Again, not a sponsor, but if you're listening, O-Meals, bring it on.
Yeah.
Because you have a fantastic product.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. Like, I didn't believe it at first. So it comes, it looks like any other freeze-dried meal package, except when you open it up, there's a heating element in a little bag, there's the food in a little bag, and then obviously the bag that you cook it in. And so you open the heating element, you slip it into the bag with the food pouch, and then you pour in 3 to 5 ounces of any liquid, it said. Basically, it just needs to boil liquid, but then the heating element activates, and in 3 to 5 minutes, you have...
It's like a little hot hand.
It takes a little bit for that heating element to get activated, and we learned that because we cooked 2 of them. But once that gets going, that water is boiling and steaming in seconds, and then, a little bit later, you have hot food.
Hot food. No boiling water. Sorry, JetBoil.
Yeah.
I mean, well, if you sponsor, we'll go back to you, JetBoil. But O-Meals, man.
Yeah, that's pretty slick.
It's pretty delicious.
Yeah.
It saves any work on heating up water. You sit there and watch the little bag gyrate until your hash browns are done.
And it's quite a bit less water. Usually you're like on a normal freeze-dried meal, you're going to use it's like 2 cups or, it's 12 to 14 ounces of water instead of 3 to 5.
True. Yeah, it's true. But yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things I'll take away from this hunt is O-Meals. So shout out, thanks O-Meals.
Might have to send them a message. That's pretty.
Say yeah.
Life on the road.
Life on the road.
Yeah.
O-Meals. I felt very accomplished. Like I had achieved something when I had cooked my Southwest rice and chicken meal.
Well, I just felt less hungry when I ate the hash browns.
Yeah, a little salt. I had a little twitch in my left eye from the salt.
Yeah,
but other than that, I felt we're good. All right, back to our turkey story.
Yeah.
It's like a non-linear turkey story that we're going.
That's all right.
Here. It's like
we'll just drag people along.
It's like the show This Is Us. You ever seen that show?
Mm-mm.
That's no okay. Well, we'll just keep moving on. If you've seen it, you know what's up. So we boogered the turkeys, and we decided that it's not worth sticking around jacking with turkeys that have already putted at us and given us the business.
Yeah. The good news is those birds, like we did hear them gobble again about 10 minutes later, way down the ridge, but we still decided just to bail out of there, let them calm down, and then possibly circle back around into that area and try to call something in.
That's right. And so we got in the truck and we just started covering terrain. Like we just knew that west and basically southwest was a giant chunk of national forest that we could traverse pretty openly. There was a lot of logging roads and 2 tracks and things we could get on. So we found one we looked nice and got going on it. And not too far from that, we were rolling around a corner and spotted a tom up on this little ridge above a grassy meadow, and he just kind of saw the truck and slowly meandered his way up into the timber, and we parked the truck, got out, and again tried to get above him, right? So we're going,
Yeah, so we pulled up the map, and where he had gone up into the timber was a little drainage that kind of basically arced up the side of this hill that, would probably climbed about 200 feet or 150 feet vertical. But there was a drainage that went up, and it was kind of broken meadows all the way up. And so we, drove the truck around, parked, and then basically went straight to the top and had looked at the map and saw that there was a bench, a nice gradual ridge at the top that led to that drainage. And if we could get to that area, we should be able to probably get him to answer and come up that drainage.
Yeah, we did. And we set up, and what the hell happened?
Well, we called, and
fucking
immediately...
stupid turkeys.
Well, yeah, but there were 3 of them. Yeah. So we only saw the one, but we called, and 3 different toms answered. And we were like, well, that's a pretty good sign. Because they're going to battle for coming into position.
We knew there. When I sat down, I heard that. I mean, we didn't set the decoys up. We heard 3 gobbles, went around the corner, hey, let's get in an open area on kind of the flat spot where these spines of these ridges will come up and meet it. So if they're going to travel on the spine to get up here, they're going to see these decoys come across this flat. We're going to be in the money. And it wasn't, we sat the decoys out and I didn't even really have time to put gloves on or do anything. It was, 100 yards, 75 yards, there's a bird gobbling. And it didn't even really do a ton of calling. Sam was working the old pot and peg, the old slate call. And didn't even do a ton of that. And in the first bird, the one we'd seen in the road was in on us within, 5 minutes probably
real
of
fast.
setting up. And it was picture perfect. I mean, he came across this open bench, strutting, spitting, drumming, giving the full show. Comes out of strut at about 65 yards. There's a little opening where him and I he could see me and I could see him pretty clearly. I don't know if he saw me or not. If he did see me, he didn't react like he saw a human. Like he just came around the corner and took a couple of looks around and looked like he was looking past Sam, like to Sam's right, and saw something he didn't like in some part of his scanning of what he was stepping into, and just putted once or twice and just turned around and kind of meandered away. Mm-hmm. And
he just kind of worked around the backside of that knob and then gobbled, going away.
Yeah. See ya.
Yep.
Peace. And so we thought, well, we didn't really spook him. He just was wary of coming any further. So let's work our way around the ridge, see if we can get in front of him and stay above him and get him to work back up this ridge at us.
No. And this is a good tip for any of you out there where if you have a bird come in and he kind of like doesn't quite commit, like let him move off and then get back around to where he was gobbling and strutting coming in and then call again. Because a lot of times they'll think that a hen was trying to come to meet him and all of a sudden there's a hen back where they wanted to be in the first place.
Yep.
So get to where that turkey wants to be.
Yep.
So yeah, we just kind of stayed on the backside of the ridge and worked down to a different open area about 200 yards, 150 yards away.
Yeah, and we were just milling around. I'm like, hey, hit the call and let's see where he is. Hit the call, and a different bird is now maybe less than 100 yards away that time.
Yeah.
So like quickly chunk the decoy, just put a hen down because I'm thinking, well, this last bird might have gotten flared by the Jake decoy. Let's just put a hen out as to not have anything really other than that sexy hen there. And let's get set up. And I get back, probably 30 yards from the decoy, get set down. You are off to my left, and now the turkey, like this is not the turkey we were planning to hunt. And where he's coming or he's gobbling from, I think he's going to be in between you and I, or come right to you.
Yeah.
And now we've got trouble.
Because originally I had set up to to think that we were going to call him back basically from the line that the first turkey took. But now he's looped around, basically walked past where we were sitting originally and is coming to my call. So I was on the backside of the tree. But yeah, I was pretty worried that he was going to come between me and you and that shotgun.
Yeah. So I couldn't see you. Or at least when I was trying to scan for the turkey and scan for you, I'm like, I knew the tree you were under, but I was like, he's going to have to be from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock for me to shoot him. I'm not going to shoot him from 6 to 12. I'm just going to kind of cut this in a pie because I'm not going to. Yeah. I like Sam more than I want to kill a turkey. I don't want to shoot him. So a little bit of a sticky situation there, but he came around perfect. I mean, he came right at my 1 o'clock and came in and I saw him at 70 yards. I shifted a little bit, got set up, and here again, this turkey comes into about 60 yards, 55 yards, and just hangs up. And he didn't even, it was very similar to the one before him. Hung up. We don't know why they were hanging up. There's no. Yeah,
we're assuming, it could have been a lot of things, but guessing that somebody's been in there messing with those birds with the decoy or something, and trying to get in on them, and they've seen that.
Yeah, and then there's something in our setup that they're seeing. I was shooting a Weatherby, the new Weatherby 18i, and it's not the synthetic version because we'll just blame this on Ryan Callahan. He took my synthetic version. So there's a little shininess.
We'll just get out the spray paint for your next time.
Sorry, Weatherby guys.
I'm sure they would appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm sure they would like that. But it's a fantastic shotgun. It got the job done. So we're not sure what these two birds saw, but this guy, I'm playing the last instance in my head, not even knowing at this point. I didn't even know which bird this was. I thought this might be the same turkey from the first time. So I'm thinking he's doing it again. Mm-hmm. And so he gets to about 55 and starts to peel off, and he's facing away from me now, and I got a clear open shot. And I'm like, well, if he stops within the next 5 yards, I'm going to kill him. And he stopped perfect, quartering away, just put it on his head, and boom. I didn't hit him in the head, but I crippled him, and he took a few flops and just kind of laid down. He was dead on arrival.
Yeah.
And I put another shot in him, and he was done. and then we celebrated.
We celebrated.
And it's like there's something. You said this even when we were going up this hill to kind of get into this situation. It's like I fucking love this, man. Like I love this. I love this so much.
I don't know why it's so much fun.
It's the cat and mouse. Like it's the cat and mouse game that you play, knowing that this is like a 20-pound raptor that sleeps in trees. You look at its feet. It's like you're chasing a dinosaur. It has now we know all about its cloaca and the mysterious sexual intercourse that they have. But there's something about it, the time of year, the way that you are playing this game with a turkey, like you're talking to it.
Yeah.
You are literally convincing it of something that is untrue. Like you are setting a narrative for the turkey. Mm-hmm. And so I had the same feeling as you. It's just like electric.
Yeah.
You are electrified by what's going on. And the experience is...
and it's just, it's so interactive. And when you get a bird in close and they gobble like within, 50, 60 yards, like it just like whatever that sound is that they emit, like whatever frequency, it's like one of those like just like you can feel it in your heart. Like it hits so hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's nothing like it, I don't think. I think elk is, of course...
You can't really compare. A lot of people say like turkey hunting is just like elk hunting, but it's
it's
not. Yes, you're calling an animal in,
but it's not the same thing.
Not the same.
Not at all. And it's just a different time of year. The natural world is coming alive. It's just a different function for a hunter. And I wouldn't say one's better than the other, but goddamn, I love turkey hunting. It would be hard for me to sit here and say that I love elk hunting as much, if not more. I think they're probably on the same plane, but whatever. I mean, it doesn't really matter.
No.
The point is, if you're not turkey hunting, a lot of people in the West, now that I live in the West, will say, like, it's bear season. Like, listen, man. No, it's not. It's turkey season. You can, as soon as you filled your turkey tags, then you can bear hunt. That's how it should always be. So let it be written.
Speaking of bear seasons and turkey seasons, Colorado does not have a spring bear season. And last year, my older brother was turkey hunting, and they put a bird to roost, went in there in the morning, bird flew down, and they started calling to him. Had this big tom on a rope coming in. The hunt got busted up because they called in a black bear with their turkey calls.
Yeah.
Scared it off.
Yes.
So,
yeah, Steve Ranella has a story about that exact same thing, realizing he was hunting the same thing that the bear was hunting and having like some revelation because of an understanding of the predatory behaviors. But yeah, I mean, this is a cool spot. I'm doing the one day wonder.
Yeah.
I am now leaving to go back to Montana to try to kill another bird before I have to go back home and then hit up the BHA rendezvous. So I'm doing, I would say, what I would refer to as a dick move. Just coming into camp, eating all your food.
I'll forgive you this time. So,
yeah. Well, I appreciate you riding along, and go follow Sammy at Sam Soholt. You'll see all kinds of stuff. Public Land Tees. Go there. They actually have turkey T-shirts there.
We do.
Which, other than the Meat Eater, no one else in the world makes a good turkey T-shirt.
I'm glad I'm like right on par with.
Yeah, no. I mean, go buy Meat Eater stuff first.
Sure.
And then Public Land Tea, so I don't get in trouble with my bosses.
Yeah, you got to say that. But all spring.
I got to say that.
Yeah, all spring, any turkey shirt sold, we're giving $5 to the National Wild Turkey Federation.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And like I said, there's not a whole lot of turkey. There's not a lot of like what I would call new school turkey gear out there.
Yeah.
That you could feel real proud in. I think Public Land Tees, you can.
Absolutely.
That's what I think.
Yeah, that's the way I feel about it.
And Sam didn't even ask me to say that.
No,
people say like, "Oh, you came on there to promote
you're
T-shirts."
Sponsored.
He didn't. No, he didn't. I like them. So
I happen to be wearing one
in your
currently.
face.
Yep.
People listening.
So go buy a T-shirt. I appreciate it in advance.
That'd be cool. And so does turkeys. So do turkeys, and so does NWTF.
Yep.
So do I.
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there because they're great and they're super friendly and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where Land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to Land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
All right, we're going to get into the interview portion of the program. And now we're going to take a hard left at turkey hunting. We're going to move into some of the social sciences and the human interaction with hunting and wildlife. Now, Alex and Libby Metcalf are our interview guests today, and they are professors at the University of Montana in Missoula. Am I saying that right? Is that the University of Montana in Missoula?
Yes.
I get confused. I'm new.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay, I got that right. So I went over there a couple of days ago, and right before I came here, and I got to meet with some of their students, some of their BHA club students there at the university, and they blew me away. They absolutely blew me away. Shout out to Mateen and Hannah and a bunch of the other people that I met that are doing things in their college years that I didn't do. Sam and I probably were running around being adolescent idiots at the time. I'm speaking for you, Sam.
That's fine. I'll accept that.
I definitely was. I speak for myself on that one. I definitely was. And I wasn't thinking in a broad context like these guys.
Not even close.
Yeah, like talking to this guy, Craig Martin, who's the president of the chapter over there for BHA. I mean, the way that they think, they talk about sustainability, they talk about harvesting animals, they talk about mentoring new hunters, they have a hunting for sustainability event that they put on, they have a bunch of mentorship programs that they put on. I wish that I had more time to podcast with them and also their professors, so everyone here could learn about the way that they see the world at the stage that they are in it, because it is unique. And I will say, hopefully they listen to this at some point. But personally, for those folks, I was inspired by what you guys had to say, and by your passion for the outdoors and public lands and wildlife and the way that you look at those things. I will do anything I can to help foster that. And I think, Montana is lucky to have these young people that are there at the University of Montana. So thank you for that, guys and gals. And then I sat down right after that. I sat down with their professors, Alex and Libby Metcalf. And it's an interesting conversation. It goes to the social sciences and the way that you use social studies to build data sets to kind of tell either they're working with state agencies, and they're also just working on an academic level to tell folks the motivation of hunters and how they interact with wildlife. So there's some interesting stuff there. I will tell you, after thinking and listening back to the interview, it's a complicated thing to understand. It's not as simple as here's the data, here's the results. And so you may find it to be a twisting and turning tale, but hopefully you'll listen to Alex and listen to Libby and learn a little bit about what they do, because it is very important in my opinion. So without further ado, we will travel back in time to Missoula, Montana, where we'll see Alex and Libby Metcalf. Alex and Libby, how are you?
Great.
Yeah, good to be here.
Good to be here. It's good to be here. I always like to do this, like to break the ice here by having you guys describe the surroundings, and so people won't be able to see where we are. It's very, very mysterious. So, Alex, you want to kind of describe where we are in the micro and macro sense,
Sure.
of the word?
Yeah, I mean, we invited you specifically to this room and not our offices because this is a much better setting. But yeah, we're here in Missoula, Montana. It's a beautiful day, blue skies, looking out at Mount Jumbo at Main Hall. Here, we're sitting in the forestry building, which is a pretty historic place on campus. The college here has been around for over 100 years and founded right here. And we're up here on the third floor, right outside the wildlife biology main office. And we're sitting in the conference room with a wall of black dissertations that are all extremely important. And
A lot of words.
A lot of words. And then, of course, above the dissertations, we have a few of our native species here in stuffed form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I went to college, there wasn't any taxidermy,
Yeah.
but I'm very jealous.
Yeah. Being younger professors, our taxidermy is coming along. We're working on the collection, but they have a better one in this room for sure.
This is pretty good.
Yeah.
I like it. Libby, tell us about yourself and your relationship to Alex too, so people know all about that.
Oh, yeah. Alex is my spouse. He's my partner and also a faculty member here with me at the University of Montana. And I'm an associate professor in the Department of Society and Conservation. And I sit on a couple different curricular programs, but I direct our Parks, Tourism, and Recreation Management program. But I'm also part of the Wildlife Biology program, which is the #1 wildlife biology program in the nation.
Ooh, gotta mention it.
Gotta
Yeah.
mention it. Here in the College of Forestry.
We'll add in a sound effect, like
Yeah.
a ding.
Ding. Yeah, and so I've spent the last decade here in Montana thinking about wildlife and how humans and wildlife interact. And I've done it from a couple different perspectives. Probably my most notable work in the human dimensions of wildlife field is probably my work on gender and hunting.
Yeah.
And so I've been thinking a lot about how we engage women in the sport, and which is kind of cool.
Yeah, we were talking to one of your students, Hannah, earlier, and she was explaining, like, a graduate student, I believe, that was correct. And she was explaining kind of the thing that struck me was her interaction in like Sportsman's Warehouse, or when she goes to something I had not thought of, when she goes to a big box store or really any gun store or hunting store, and she's with a male counterpart, whether it's her boyfriend or just a friend or whomever, that the salesperson would talk to the male and like never even give her any eye contact, even if she asked the question.
Yeah.
And that's not something I had considered before talking to her. And I expressed to her, listen, I understand that we need to get across this gap, and we need to do better than pandering to women hunters and outdoorsmen with pink things and the way that the tropes that we have devised to do that currently. But that certainly, her comment got like really fired me up on that subject. So I'm excited to talk about that.
Yeah.
Alex, kind of run us through, in your professional career, what you are up to.
Yeah.
here.
So, let's see. I followed Libby around. We both did our grad work at Penn State. We were in different programs there. Libby was in recreation, parks and tourism. There, I have to learn all the different acronyms for PTRM, RPTM. Yeah. But I was over in the forestry program at Penn State, and was thinking more about private land conservation, specifically like forest landowners back east. But you don't talk to landowners very long before you end up talking about wildlife.
Yeah.
And so coming west, the wildlife conversation definitely blew up. And I think, the wildlife biology program here recognize that they have obviously just amazing depth in the biology, but that as you look around the state and the country and the world, a lot of the problems that we have with wildlife center around people.
Yeah.
The answers aren't going to come from the biology. And so, so as we came here, me and the resource conservation program and Libby and recreation, our interest in wildlife grew, and kind of their interest in incorporating the human dimensions grew. And so we were able to join the faculty, oh my goodness, 5 or 6 years ago, something like that.
Wow. And how many students do you interact with, on a semester basis? I'm trying to get my college lingo back. It's been a while.
Yeah, so it depends on the semester for sure. For me, I teach our large introductory kind of introduction to natural resource conservation course. It's about 120 students in there, mostly freshmen. Mm-hmm. So it's a big lecture hall. The potential for sleeping is high. So I have abandoned PowerPoint and I wander the room. Did you really? I draw on the board.
Like
and
a taser.
And I raise my voice at random intervals. Yeah. And so I interact with a lot of those students, through the fall, and it's kind of just the beginning of their career here. So it's really fun. They're excited to be here. They want to change the world. And I get to kind of be a part of that optimism. And then that same semester, I generally teach a graduate theory course on kind of human dimensions that Libby and I swap back and forth on. Right. And there's generally 15 or so grad students in there. And then in the spring semester, I teach a course on collaboration. And I have somewhere between 40 and 50 undergrads in there. And then we've got our lab that, depending on the year, we have
5 to 8.
Yeah, 5 to 8 grad students in there, either master's or PhD, working on there. And we like a lot of professors here, we run a pretty intimate lab where we're meeting one-on-one with those students, probably not as frequently as they would like, but as frequently as we can, on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to really work on their particular project.
Got it.
So, yeah.
A lot?
Hundreds. Yeah.
Hundreds. And I was asking Libby this before we came on. Like you said, there's a lot of important work that goes on in the wildlife sciences in this building, but for a conversation as relatively short as this would be, to kind of microwave all this into something that we really want to cover and talk about what's important for people to know, I'm going to give Libby a chance to set it up. It's in a broad sense with what you guys work on, with all I read a lot of the papers and I've looked at kind of how you explain what you do, and it's not just like chef or driver. It has more nuance to it, I imagine. So, Libby, with all that said, give us a rundown of kind of how you guys think about the world and what you try to achieve here.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll try not to screw it up.
There's no wrong answer.
There's no wrong answer.
You guys ever tell your students no wrong answer?
Yeah, that's not true.
Except when there is.
Except when it's wrong. Everybody gets a trophy. Okay.
We are. Our interests are. We're social scientists and we study people, and we have the benefit of studying people in really cool natural places. And so our kind of the thread that weaves between our research and the work we do here in our different programs is how we incorporate social science into decision-making processes for natural resources. And so that whether that's wildlife and thinking about how we integrate the science to understand how a community might tolerate a certain species, or how we think about different management actions that are coming out from state agencies, or all the way through to kind of R3 efforts and how we use data and science to kind of inform our initiatives and where we should be directing efforts in the state. And so we're really interested in kind of that, incorporating that social science into that natural resource decision-making process.
Yeah. What brought you to that? I mean, a little bit learned of what you currently do and maybe what brought you to this place, but what brought you personally to those interests?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always think about, like, people always ask me how I got interested in studying gender and hunting. And I did my master's at West Virginia University, and prior to going to WVU, I really was not interested in hunting at all. It was not an activity I wanted to do. It was not an interest of mine. And starting to work in West Virginia and work with some of the local leaders and some of the locals on the ground, I started to understand how hunting was a critical part of the social fiber of that community. And in particular, how frequently women were out hunting, and just starting to understand the different motivations that women had. And one of the things I noticed was just obviously the bringing game meat home to their families to support the livelihood of those families. Mm-hmm. And so that was something that stuck with me in my master's. And then transferring up to Penn State, I had an opportunity to kind of explore that a little bit more. And so I just started to really think about how hunting as a recreation activity and how women engaged in that sport, and how our decision makers were not really thinking or considering that particular group or segment of the population. And so that really inspired kind of my dissertation work. And from there, I fell in love with thinking about wildlife. And, I have like the anecdotal kind of reading certain books like Prodigal Summer or, some of the kind of more popular media books that talked a lot about carnivores or talked about predators and their relationship to animals and humans, and just being totally romanticized by that. And when the call came out to work at University of Montana, and I was like, oh, I think I'm going to put my name in for that one.
As far as the Wildlife Resource Department goes, they got a lot of them.
That's exactly right. And so it just developed from there. And what we found when we got here to UM and in the state is that our state agencies, our colleagues that we're working with across campus, were really just interested in how we use this social science to make decisions. And so we were able to translate a lot of the theories and the ideas that we've been practicing through graduate work and actually apply those into a lot of real world settings out here.
Cool. Well, the first thing that comes to your mind is the application of those theories. Give me the best example.
That's a great question. And so
this is the part they edit out. So
like
hemming and hawing.
No, that's the way that you get to the answer. You're like, that's a wonderful question.
While I'm thinking of the answer,
I will refer back to this often during this conversation. But I just met with some of your students, the BHA members, and every question they asked me, I replied with "great question."
Great question.
And that was only to delay, so my synapses could fire and I could think of something to say.
Yep.
Yeah, great question, Ben.
Yeah, great question.
That's a great question. So I'll just take my gender work. There's a particular theory called constraints theory, and we've applied this across different recreation settings. And so it's been used on persons with disabilities. It's been used on older adults. It's been used on indoor recreation settings, outdoor recreation settings, and it had not been applied, this theoretical approach, to hunting. And so I went through and used a model to predict hunting behavior. And so I used how women were constrained by hunting, how they negotiated through that hunting. I used measures like self-efficacy, so their confidence that they felt while they were hunting, and also measures of social support. And so if you look through like a lot of the R3 literature, these are things that, organizations are touching on. They're like, oh, you need mentors, you need support. And so what I did is just measure those using kind of tested measures out of psychology and social psychology. And I was
Take us through those details. Exactly how do you measure that?
Yeah, it's a great question. How do you even do that? Well, we are mixed method researchers. And so we do a little bit of interviewing, but we do a lot of kind of survey work. And so we ask a lot of people questions. And so we often have like a battery of questions. And so it's, I might ask you, tell me about your hunting constraints on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the least constrained, 5 being the most constrained. Tell me how constrained were you by these factors? And they might have things like complex rules and regulations.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding, ding. 5.
No time, no resources, I don't know where to hunt. I don't have anyone to hunt with. And so then I'll get people to respond on a 1 to 5 Likert scale. And so I take that quantitative data and I actually, through the theory, understand the relationships between certain variables. So I understand that, you have constraints, but you also have these motivations that help you overcome those constraints. And so through complex sampling and complex statistical analysis.
Like complex.
Very complex.
Only the most sophisticated.
Only the most sophisticated modeling techniques.
I always say that requires a calculator.
It does. There's a nice, like, we have these like computers and these software systems, and we throw in all the important details, and then it spits out a model at the end. But we're able to get to kind of these ultimate variables that we're interested in. So I'm really interested in what's predicting hunting participation. And so from my kind of model of understanding women, I'm able to say, okay, if they have more support, if they're more confident, if they have fewer constraints, then they are more likely to participate in some type of hunting activity.
Yeah. I think that you have anything to add to that, Alex?
No.
It's been a good
I try
husband
not
right
to,
there.
yeah.
What she said.
I'm not an idiot, despite this look.
What she said. I think it's super interesting to me. I know it always calls back to R3, but I think that there's a lot of conversations that I've had recently that are around the complexity of those motivations, right? How we get to where we are, right? Sitting in a room with your students here half an hour ago, I was just kind of studying their stories to try to determine how each of them came to be where they are today. Because I believe you guys and they are both in a pretty amazing place where you're able to spend time analyzing these factors, understanding them, and articulating them to other folks. So when you started on this particular venture, like what difficulties did you run into? What things are you looking for? What pitfalls and these kind of studies are out there? Yeah,
I mean, I can go right to my most limiting factors of my research, which are always great. Sometimes it's really hard to understand the people who are not engaging in hunting. Mm-hmm. There's not a list of non-hunters out there.
Damn it
is right. We could just do some targeted marketing. It's the same thing we often hear about, kind of this elusive wildlife enthusiast group. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants to know about the wildlife enthusiast. You're like, oh, they're increasing. More people are wildlife viewing. And then you go to want to study that group. There's no list of them. And so one of our challenges as researchers is finding the right sample of people to actually ask questions of. And I think it's particularly interesting when it's related to R3, because you're really trying to capture the people who are not hunting. And so my work on gender was a study of, it was males and females, but it was of people who are already big game hunting. And so I'm asking about the things that are constraining them, but they've overcome the constraints. And so it's almost kind of this like post hoc analysis of how they did that. Yeah. And what we're really interested in are those people who aren't doing it. Yeah. And so how do you find them?
Is there an answer to that question?
There is no answer.
I thought you maybe had the answer to that question.
Yeah.
You don't hunt? All right, come over.
Yeah, come on in. I'll ask you a few questions.
Do you start, when you're thinking about these things, do you start with a hypothesis of this is why more women aren't getting into hunting? Is there a concrete hypothesis, or are you working just from some sort of data set?
That's a good question. There are some guiding research questions, and we find those in hypotheses, like when we actually get into the analysis. But we often try to figure out what's missing out of the literature. And so you start with a kind of, I have this brilliant idea. Let's see if it's even been studied. And you start going and digging into the literature, which is made, even in the 20 years that we've been through grad school and here, the internet has been phenomenal in that regard. So we're able to access a lot more research. And then we develop a research question out of that and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, the methods will follow based on the question, right? So you might have some phenomenon that you just don't know a lot about, and you need to go learn more. And you need to do just what we're doing here. You go talk to people. You train yourself to be a really good listener and ask really open-ended questions and follow the threads. And those will lead you to,
Sounds like a podcast host.
Absolutely.
You're hosting your own private podcast.
Private podcast with research protections. Yeah. But then if Libby mentioned we do kind of mixed methods, so we'll often pair that interview and more exploratory research with some sort of quantitative follow-up, where out of that interviewing we come to a hypothesis and we wonder if A is related to B, and so we'll then design a quantitative study with a representative sample that allows us to infer up and scale up to some populations. And so that's where the survey work comes in.
So you guys brought some notes. You have some examples of your works. It's time to get in. Go. I like to.
This is really good podcast fodder here.
Papers rattling. Yes, it's the two mediums beating each other.
Yeah, we wouldn't be good academics if we didn't bring our papers, right?
No, I appreciate that. I should have brought some papers. So give me let's start with one of pick your favorite. You got looks like you have about 8 or 9 or 10.
A few.
Pick your favorite and tell me. Give us a quick rundown of one of these studies, and we'll dissect it. I've read a few of them.
You want to talk about elk and brucellosis?
I was going to say, why would you not start with that one?
Yeah.
It's like our favorite one. I mean, it's my favorite. Your favorite, I don't know.
Like you're just playing the hits right now.
I am. We're playing the hits.
I like it.
Yeah, one of the first studies that we collaborated with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks on was trying to understand, how the agency could approach the elk and brucellosis management problem that they have out of Yellowstone. And let me see if I can do this briefly, but brucellosis is
plenty of time.
Yeah, plenty of time. Brucellosis is a pretty nasty disease that was introduced by livestock originally, 100 and some odd years ago. It's now in the wildlife populations and is often transmitted back to cattle, which is bad news if you like to eat steak or sell steak. And so, so there's lots of options on the table for how to manage kind of elk on the landscape and keep them from interacting with cattle and spreading the disease. And so there's been lots of effort by the cooperative unit here on campus, Mike Mitchell and some other folks at FWP to kind of collaboratively get the major stakeholders involved to come up with some options. But they wanted to know what the broader public thought about that, both just general Montana residents, landowners specifically, but also hunters. And so we worked with them to do kind of a 3-tiered study of those groups in a concentrated area right outside Yellowstone, as well as across the state, so we could just kind of understand how the whole Montana public felt. And it's one of those opportunities where you go in with lots of ideas about what might matter, right? Like we thought going in that once cattle were infected, that people would change their minds. Like it's an emergency, we got to do something about it. We thought that, the kind of status of the elk population would be really important. And that did come out. But what really rose to the top at the end of the day was like public access to private lands.
Really?
So it didn't really matter what kind of tool we were talking about. It didn't matter which stakeholder group we were talking about. The public, hunters, and landowners themselves wanted to see landowners reciprocate with public access if they were going to receive some sort of assistance from the state. And so it puts an interesting kind of context to the discussion of the issue here. And so, and what I like about it is that we have this, nasty publication with lots of numbers and citations and no pictures. I think we successfully avoided any picture.
No pictures.
Oh no, that's true. We got some
elk
bubbles.
with
We got some bubbles in there. Yeah.
Bubble charts.
Yeah.
I think to lead off and say that what you first found is that these people were united on access is very surprising to me. Yeah. I don't know, what do you attribute that to? Is it the place they live? Because that's can't be the case across the country. Not in my experience, at least, with anecdotal evidence less than what you have.
I don't think we got into the mechanisms of it, so I hesitate to speculate on what that is. But it's something that some stakeholders advocate for and other stakeholders advocate against. And so what allows us to Libby's shaking her head at me. I'm always the one who's like, I'm underselling. I'm trying to say as least as possible.
I don't even know why you wouldn't just. This is a perfect example. So we couch this idea in reciprocity, and so when we're thinking about, am I right?
Yeah.
I got to play mediator, guys.
Little did you know.
Yeah, and so the idea that if you're going to get something from the state, that you have to give back, and so this idea of reciprocity is if we go back to like core human values, this is a thing. This is a thing that people like. They want to know that if they are giving, they are getting something back in return. And that's just kind of human nature. And so the idea of reciprocity in terms of getting assistance from the state and then opening up your land for hunting is a real thing.
What a best case scenario for the shared ideas and the culture of a place.
Yeah.
Is to have that reciprocity be so ingrained that that even in a micro case like this, that it's evident is amazing. It's great. It's great news.
It is cool news.
Yep.
So what else is in there?
It was a good study.
What did you find in the end as you wrote your paper there with all the bubble shrimp?
Well, I was going to say, like, we wrote this nasty thing, but what was nice is, and FWP really kind of forced us to think, outside the box in terms of how to communicate our work at the end of the day. And so we survive here by publishing, so that exists. But working with them to put together kind of a graphical representation of this research at the end of the day. And so what this allows us to do is to take all of these things that people think are important and put them all into one model and understand how they really, what comes out on top. And that's when that public access came out as kind of the strongest piece. Wow. So when we put it up against whether people like to see animals killed or not, whether we put it up against whether the elk population is high or low, whether cattle have been infected or not.
That's an amazing
put it
one to
all
me.
Together. Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about an economic driver for private landowners that is seemingly set aside at some level for this idea of reciprocity.
Yeah.
Well, and it's kind of cool because sometimes when we work with FWP, they're looking to make sure that they're looking for help to make sure they're thinking about an issue the right way, and that so a lot of times we'll work with the state when it's a little bit more of a controversial issue, or they're looking for some kind of assistance with the scientific kind of robustness of a particular study. And so we'll come in and work pretty intimately and closely with the state to come up with an idea, and then they kind of turn it over to us to do the sampling and to make sure we're asking the right questions and who we're asking them of. And so as we think about this, my husband will be modest, but he is really good at sampling. And so how do we sample people in a way that's statistically sound? And so he thinks about this over and over and over
Key
again.
to getting the ladies, guys.
Yeah.
Good at sampling. Large sample size.
We were just talking about my college days.
That's what really turned me on in grad school.
I just told you, I went to a school that was all girls before.
Yeah, play the
couple
numbers.
years before I went there. I played the numbers and I lost.
Yeah,
but I still stand behind my strategy.
But so when we think about it, we sampled and we in the statistics and we did some weighting and so this represents the groups that we intended to represent. And so a lot of times people are like, oh, it's social science. You manipulated the data. No, we didn't. This is we followed a pretty rigorous approach from the start. And so we are confident when we say this is how people felt across the state. And we didn't just we sampled landowners as a particular group. We sampled hunters, and then we had a general population as well. And so we got kind of at all these three different groups that the agency was really interested in.
But like any science, at the end of the day, it's up to the decision makers in charge to weigh all sorts of different evidence. But I think our role is to put numbers to the human dimension to this, instead of lots of speculation or people saying they speak for the majority. Let's go actually measure that.
Yeah, and on this podcast, we have been having a lot of conversations about our model of conservation and talking about how, each step of that process. And this is heartening to me because it's highlighting how science and even social science, which we don't think of a lot as hunters, how social science impacts wildlife management on a state level, which is which really the key, the center point of our model of conservation. And so what you guys are talking about is, hopefully for everyone listening, if you were ever to doubt the science or biology that's baked into state wildlife management, they're holding these animals in trust for all of us. This is a great example of how this leads up and why I really wanted to come and chat with you guys. Exactly what you just said. And it's the fact that you're talking about elk transferring disease to a money crop, which is cattle, and people still not. I mean, that's the common trope in the West is the private landowner versus the public land user, and the way that all works out. When you guys are talking to these survey folks, how do you speak to them? Do they fill out a form? Do you speak to them personally? Obviously not.
Yeah. Again, we do it different ways for different studies, but we do a lot of mail surveys. So we, are mailing you a packet of, a letter and a questionnaire that you fill out. And if you don't fill it out, we will send you a postcard to say, please fill it out. And if you don't fill it out, we'll send you another one to say, fill it out.
Come to your house.
Yeah. If I could and had the time, I would.
Yeah. We want the easiest path to be to fill it out and send it back to us. So a lot of that. Again, we do a lot of interviews too. So we'll go out and talk to people and record those interviews, and the words become the data.
Yeah, particularly with elk and brucellosis. Did you have any interactions with private landowners that you felt were impactful?
So I sometimes get the position of being the person of contact on surveys. I think my husband gladly defers to me to be that person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. More affable.
She gets the calls.
Yeah. So I get the calls, and
they end better.
I mean, I truly enjoy talking to people, and so the idea that I get to pick up the phone and talk to somebody through our survey and the importance of filling it out. And it's really interesting because we got landowners, hunters, we got all sorts of people, we got husbands and wives, and they all have something they want to tell me about the survey or about the issue that we're actually studying. And so part of this research is sometimes just listening to the person on the other end of the phone, and if they have a complaint or if they have an issue, and just being willing to have that conversation. And so there is we get minor things like one wife called me and said, "Why didn't I get the survey? I'm a hunter." And so then you have to talk through sampling, and this is a simple random sample, and so you weren't chosen. Your husband was chosen, and absolutely your voice is important. And here are the ways that I think you can contribute to wildlife conservation. Then you get folks who think you're asking the wrong questions. Why would you ask this question? This is a stupid question. It's totally leading.
How do you live your life as a social scientist and not just want to punch yourself in the face? Like I had an interaction this morning where social sciences, they're not talking to enough people. I said, what? How did you possibly make that inference from nothing that you know? And so I think that I'm sure that you deal with that all the time.
All the time. Sure. And you have to we just systematically go through, here are the steps we took. Here's why we did it. Let me tell you a little bit about the weighting we'll do. Here's how I think it represents. And that's where we what's cool about us, I think, as a university professors and faculty, we have that training and grounding to feel confident in the design that we've chosen. And we don't do it perfectly. We don't ask the perfect questions every single go around. But we strive for kind of developing solid questions, and we do all sorts of crazy stuff to check these surveys before they go out. We pre-test it on all of our students. So we make and you think the public's critical. Try giving your survey to all your students.
I met some of them. They're
you're
pretty critical people.
I know.
I liked it.
Yeah. They got that critical part of the critical thinking down.
They really did. You're give me all your feedback. And then it's torn apart, and they're yelling at you on paper, and you're like, okay, I have feelings too.
I bought this red pen for something.
And so we do that. We test it there. We, of course, if we're doing work for the agency is working with us on that survey development, so they're comfortable with the kind of questions we're asking.
We'll send it to colleagues across the country to critique and review, and and a lot of the questions that we use, we don't come up with on the fly. They've been used, in the literature and in other studies over and over, and so there's some validity that's been built over time.
Okay.
But it's definitely a young science.
Yeah, it is, and like I said, a lot of people. There's the methodology I think is important to cover here because people. I think it's relatively easy from the outside looking in to poke holes in some of these methodologies. So specifically on elk and brucellosis, when you go to write this paper, what's your interaction with FWP? What are they grading you on?
That's a good question.
How are they thinking about the result that this paper that you're turning in at the end of the process?
Yeah, I think that they want to know. I hesitate to speak for them, but they want to know when they go to the commission to say, just as they would with a population model of elk, they want to say with confidence that the data are what the data are, and that people's attitudes are this. And so the peer review process allows a higher level of confidence in those data and in our results. So So they'll defer to us in terms of thinking about what the theoretical framing is and how to kind of couch this in the existing literature. And then as that goes through the peer review process, the results then are much more robust for them to have some confidence when they present them to the commission.
Gotcha. So what did they present in this case?
I think
what's the abstract?
I think I presented it, and I was.
Oh, nice.
Were you pregnant?
I was pregnant. I was so uncomfortable. So I'm only pregnant enough at the time. So it was like, did I eat like an extra hamburger, or was that a belly?
So it's the awkward stage of pregnancy. I like that.
Yeah, and then I had pregnancy brain. So it was actually probably better that I did it, because then I probably didn't even remember that it happened at the time.
You're just eating ice cream and be quiet.
You want to argue with me?
Don't talk to me. I'm eating pickles.
It was comical. I remember that. And so we presented them with kind of our key findings. We talked about the access to private lands. We talked about having that elk population objectives were somewhat, people wanted to see some regulation that followed some of the population objectives.
So like as elk populations were too abundant, like above objective, that people were more okay with kind of, more lethal control, more heavy hand on the management side, which is, it's intuitive, but literally no one had put data to that before, which is, sometimes we find exactly what people think we're going to find, but now we have data and we know. And
That's
it's
a
not
great
your
point.
opinion.
It's a great point. I mean, there's this anecdotal, like, yeah, of course that's what people are going to say, but
how do you know? And how does that interact? How important is that relative to this public access question?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not that.
That's
so the
where,
data can show us.
Yeah, that's where it gets interesting.
Well, and we were also able to show kind of where on particular management actions where there was a lot more disagreement. And so we used a method that depicts that for our agency. And so, like I'm showing you this, there's a bunch of figures with bubbles on them, and some of the bubbles are big and some of the bubbles are small. And the small bubbles suggest that there's a lot of agreement, whereas the big bubbles suggest that there's a lot of disagreement. And so, at the time they were considering kill permits, and they were, for later season kill permits. And there was a lot of disagreement around those kill permits, regardless if you're a hunter, landowner, or general population. And so the other one that was kind of interesting was permanently fencing haystacks was also a place where we saw a lot of disagreement on how to manage elk. Yeah. And so it's kind of an interesting depiction. It's called Potential for Conflict Index, and it was developed out of some researchers at Colorado State University. And
PCI, huh?
Yeah, PCI. And you can go, whoever's listening, look us up, and on our webpage we have the report. So if anyone's interested in kind of thinking about it a little bit more.
The other thing that's interesting there is that we like to talk about these groups, and we just did in terms of sampling, like landowners, they're all the same. Hunters, they all feel the same way. And this data really show where that is appropriate and where it's really not, where you have varying views within the hunter population about the acceptability of different management techniques or even hunting itself. And so figuring out when it's appropriate to kind of think about hunters as one group and when you really can't do that.
Yeah, that's something I think about a lot. I've talked about in recent podcasts, we talked about R3 a lot. I just sat down with a group called the Sportsman's Alliance, and they deal with specifically legislation against or fighting against animal rights activists. Mm-hmm. And they were, and much of that conversation was around how do you feel like you have a united front on one side that is animal rights and opposes what we do in some level that, really kind of right now at its edges, but eventually that would be pushing inward. And then you have this hunting group that's hard to define, right? It's very regional, it's very pursuit based, it's very perspective based and value system based. And it's all just a mess. And so if you guys could please help.
Well, it's interesting.
Define it a little bit better.
Well, I always brings me back to this critical piece of literature from the 60s. This is an early recreation study, and the title was The Average Camper Who Doesn't Exist. And so it's literally in one of my papers, as I was scanning it, I was like, oh, I got that reference in there. To suggest that all hunters or all women or all landowners are the exact same is something we all do do this. We all say hunters, we all say landowners, but they are very different. And like you said, it's different regionally. It's different if you're on this side of the Rocky Mountains or that side of the Rocky Mountains. If you're living with grizzly bears or without grizzly bears, there's just a lot of variation. And so, studying issues from a very micro level all the way up to a macro level is needed. And so you can't just do one study. There's often kind of a tiered process of trying to understand all the...
It's job security there, right there.
It really
I was going to
is.
say, it's never ending.
Yeah, future research.
It's a never ending story.
Yeah. Every paper has future research. That's where we shove it all.
Well, it's like I was, just reading on your report here. It says that this PCI revealed that public access for hunting can reduce conflict among cattle producers. That's a sentence that I maybe before moving out west, definitely before talking to you guys, it's something that I would have bet against rather than bet for. So again, I could probably keep coming back to this in this conversation. I know this is a little bit different with brucellosis and less elk, who's less disease transfer, things of that nature. But again, it goes to the point of,
well, that's the fun stuff is like sometimes we confirm what we already knew and now we have data, but sometimes we find surprises. And that's really the exciting stuff when we go in with one idea and the data just shows that we're just wrong. And then another idea. But
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there because they're great and they're super friendly and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where Land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to Land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
When you think about like these groups as we talk about, even if you think about outdoor recreation as a group, you could break that down into skiers, climbers, hikers, all these other things. I've done that in the past for marketing purposes, and then you think of hunters as this different group of upland hunters, turkey hunters. You can break it up regionally as well. Do you feel that the hunting subset is more complicated in its dissection than maybe the outdoor rec group? It's more varied in its perspectives. Like, how would you line that up? Because it's
yeah, I've actually never thought of it that way. I mean, what's interesting about hunting, and I would probably lump fishing in this with this as well, is that there's such a variety of how you do it and when you do it. Skiing, for example, there's one season, there's resorts and there's backcountry, and I know there's nuance between those. I'm not.
But you're not doing it in the swamps of Louisiana,
correct?
And in the plains this is not, you do it on a mountain and you go down.
That's right. And so in mountain down.
You're welcome, skiers. I've explained your pursuits.
And it's not that
They're like, what,
complicated.
cross-country skiing? I'm like, oh, crap.
And so for hunting, like there's the, how you harvest an animal, which firearms you use, whether you are into archery, whether you are into big game, small game. There are so many variations of how you hunt. And then you layer on top of that, in recreation, we have this theory called specialization. And so how you progress through an activity and become highly specialized or not. And so when you start thinking about that, I feel like hunters and anglers are very much, there's a lot of them, and they're all doing it slightly different. And it goes back to one of your kind of points on motivations and how are we understanding those motivations or experiences or recreation experience preferences. How are we understanding those for every activity and making sure we understand the full picture of what's going on the landscape?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the answer is yes. Hunting is way complicated.
Super complicated.
Super complicated, more complicated.
Yeah, I mean, we've built typologies within,
Yes.
Certain hunting or fishing activities, right? So it's not just that you are a saltwater angler. There's like 6 different types of saltwater, so.
People are
and
now
each one is
offended. They're like, you're
yeah.
typing me?
Yeah.
Don't you type
Oh,
me?
definitely.
That's exactly
we
right. I have
found your pigeonhole.
Yeah, I've got a typology for you. They always range. When we do a typology study, there's like this. I call them the all around enthusiast. There's someone who's like jazzed about everything, and then there's like the dud group, like the group at the end, who's like just kind of low on all motivations.
Why are you doing this?
Why are you even doing this? How'd you make your way into my sample?
Oh, that's
You actually don't want to be doing this.
Oh, then you say to that guy, the fact that you're doing anything, because it's 100% harder to do something than it is to do nothing, I've found. We talk about all the time in the hunting group about like just the way we have a guy that works for our company. His name's Mark Kenyon, and he's a whitetail guy. And like he kind of has just a one-track mind when it comes to that. And we're always making fun of him. I grew up as a whitetail hunter. I love whitetail hunting. It's a fantastic thing to do, sit up in a tree and all. But I can't just do that. I don't just think about that. But he does. And there's folks like that in upland and waterfowl. Like they get this niche. And even outside of like just the media landscape, where a niche is kind of a valuable thing, just in your own your own place in the culture, a lot of people pick a lane. Do you guys have any ideas about why that is, or why, like, what motivates people to kind of stick into one? I think it's like, it's boring. Whitetails get boring after a while. But not other people, like, wake up and that's all they think about. They name the deer.
You're not very good at keeping your audience, are you, Harry?
Love you guys. These whitetail guys, come back.
Well, it is interesting because obviously it's like generalist versus like highly specialized, right? And we know that. So if we look at like, we've heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it's kind of a psychology theory where you have like, you meet your basic needs, and then you can go up this pyramid and get to self-actualization. We also call that kind of flow experiences. And this is, there's a philosopher, I'm going to screw up his name. It's like Csikszentmihalyi. And
It's interesting.
That's good.
it's really good, really professional doctor. But they talk about flow experiences. And so if you can, and flow is, you can think about your favorite hunting experience or your favorite outdoor recreation experience where like the world just kind of just disappeared around you and you were just highly focused on that one thing. And so I think people who might specialize are looking to achieve that flow experience. And so if they can get there by doing the same activity and learning it so well, they can quickly get to that point in time where they feel like they are in this absolute state of self-actualization. And I know that's a little like...
No. I've had folks on podcasts that were in bear attacks that are talking about flow states.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's a strange connection between those things. But that's interesting for me to think about, because I was getting made fun of the other day for being... I was like, I'm a generalist, man. I like to do everything. I can't spend my time only doing a thing when there's so many other things to do.
Yeah.
And people were making fun of me. Well, that means you're good at nothing. I'm like, it's probably true, but
Jack of all trades, master of one.
master of only of none. But it's interesting to hear how that manifests itself in hunting.
Well, and I wonder if like generalists maybe think about flow, and the flow motivations are different. So maybe it's like the scenery or being in, like, there are some other things that are getting you to that point, and it's not just the activity itself.
Yeah. Do you guys ever think about motivations, like intrinsic versus extrinsic, and how people are motivated to do things?
Yeah, I think about it like all the time. You should come to my class. We just
Oh.
cover the section on motivations.
Really?
Yeah.
That was a good guess. So how do you, when you think about hunters, and obviously when you study it from a social level and the interactions, you have to think about motivations. So how do you think about, in the modern social media age, the extrinsic and intrinsic motivations of hunters?
Yeah. That's a good question. We can think back to like motivation theory, so expectancy valence theory, and so how people, the outcome or the benefit you're hoping to achieve as being kind of one of these driving forces. And so a lot of times in our theories, we're interested in that end goal. Like, what are you hoping? What's the benefit you're hoping to achieve at the end of it? And that is closely lined up with your motivation. And there's this really cool paper by some researchers, I don't know, in the 90s, looking at, they have a list of like 375 potential outdoor recreation motivations. And there's like this massive list. It's an awesome paper because you can, when you're doing survey research, you can just grab it and like,
Like avoiding your spouse.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm hungry.
But it's all, yeah, exactly. And so when we start thinking about motivations and which ones of that list of 375 or whatever it is, thinking about which ones are tailored mostly to hunting is important. And so we know that different groups are motivated for different reasons. And so I looked at motivations by gender.
Ooh.
And so why women and men are motivated differently. And there were some motivations that were the same. So being in nature, getting outdoors, things like that. There was some coalescing around that. I noticed that men tended to hunt more for social, like hanging out with their friends, rather than women, whereas women tended to hunt for more family related reasons. And so, which is just funny to me. Men are going out to socialize and women are going out to take care of their family. And
I'm going to say something, but I'm going to
I'm also
this is being
refrain
recorded.
from comment. Yeah.
although
I'm gonna sit this one out.
I had an awesome hunting season this year where I got out a total of one day. And this is because of my two very small children. And my husband was going out for like a week hunting trip. Awesome wife, go hunting for a week.
I'm going to sit this one out too.
Yeah. And I said to him, he's like, what do you want me to do? I said, get a damn deer. That's what I want you to do. We need some meat in our freezer. I said, and he's like, should I wait for a big one? I said, no, you get a deer. And so this idea that there are these differences between how men and women hunt. And
that's not true, actually. That is inaccurate representation. I said, do I shoot a doe on day one? And you said, hell no.
I need you to be gone for 3 days.
Like day 2 afternoon? Okay, maybe.
Now this is a good podcast right here.
Yeah.
Marital disputes.
We need to break. Yeah, we need to just swim right into that one.
It's not hard. Yeah.
That's interesting to think of for me because I was again talking to Hannah, one of your grad students here, and it just struck me that there's so much conversation around women in hunting. I remember when I read, there was a study, I want to say in 2013 by Responsive Management. It's a group out of Virginia. Oh, well, I probably got the year wrong. But they started to identify groups, as hunting was on the rise for the first time in many years since the 80s. Identify groups that were getting back into it, and they started with locavores, returning military members, and then females. And I thought, oh well, that's as far as like population sets, that's like half of all of us,
more than half, yeah.
And then a few of us that like to eat, a few of us that were in the military, and then half of us is third. This doesn't make any sense.
Well, it was fascinating. So when I was publishing my dissertation work, I had so we go through like a peer review process, and you send it out, and it's blind. You have no idea who's reviewing it, and they because it's blind, they shred you. And so it can be a really hard process. And I think I had a statement, and ultimately my reviews were great. They really helped push my paper into a better place. But one of the statements was, I disagree completely that women are going to make up for the lack of or the decline in hunting population of males. And they just disputed the fact that women were going to engage in the sport as much as I was making a case for it. And I guess that review stuck with me because I keep thinking about it. Can women really make up a big piece of that that population decline? And I don't know. But for me personally, we have to try because, like you said, it's 52% of the population. And so if we are not putting a big push on females and in particular maybe as women emerge out of college or into college, and then also family unit type hunting, I think we're missing something.
I think we're missing a lot. I will give you a little bit into the old media kit for this podcast. 91% male, 9% female, and that's pretty typical.
Reflects we were just looking at the stats of hunting participation. It's 90-10.
Is it really? Wow. Well, at least I'm representative. That's all I ever try to be. Is representative.
That's good.
Of the,
yeah, you want to be
this is average, right there. It's always been interesting to me, and I've seen that pretty much everywhere I've gone. And so when we say it's rising, to what?
Yeah.
To what end, right?
Yeah.
So getting into the paper that I read and some of your work on this, how do we start this conversation? Like, we know it's a growing set, but it's only growing to the point where it couldn't really shrink, in my opinion. That's how I start thinking about it. This couldn't shrink anymore. It can't be 4% of the population. It just doesn't make any sense for the future of hunting. Could be.
Could be.
Yeah, Alex just raises his eyebrows. Yeah, it could be if you keep talking.
Someone should study that.
So is that how you start thinking about this? Like, it can't go down; it's got to go up, or what's the way that you approach?
Yeah, it's interesting. So when I first got into looking at women in hunting, you quickly start looking at women and kind of how women experience recreation, leisure, and the different constraints that they have that men just don't have. And it's not. I'm not saying that because men don't have constraints to hunting. They have their own whole suite of different things that are preventing them from going out there. And we look at changing gender roles in society. That's preventing men from going out as often. I mean, I have to have an equal number of days of recreation as my husband does, and that's because we have an equal household.
I mean, it's really tough for us men out there, guys.
I totally agree.
It's hard for me. It's hard for me to even manage it sometimes.
And so this idea that we should be studying both experiences, it's not enough to just, focus on women, but that's what I'm really interested in. So we'll focus on that.
Yeah.
And thinking about, life stages, the fact that I hunted twice pregnant and twice while breastfeeding was a different set of constraints that you will ever have to deal with. I had
I've not had that constraint.
Yeah, you didn't have to pump every hour and a half on a hunting trip. And so that's
Can you adjust that time where there's a buck, I'll pump in 15 minutes? So can you do that? No, you can't do that.
Yeah,
it's all of a sudden you just start squirting milk everywhere.
I love it.
It took us about 40 minutes before
we knew this. We knew we were going to get here. There's no way we were going to get through this conversation.
But it was hilarious. I mean, I hunted with my girlfriend at the time who was also doing the same exact thing. And we're still questioning. I have refrained from asking any biologist if I detracted animals because I was totally in this state. I have no idea. But there's just different challenges. And so understanding the women's experience and what they are competing against, and just that's an important inquiry, and that's an important piece of trying to get more women involved in the activity. And it's like you said earlier, it's not a one size fits all model. We have amazing Becoming Outdoors women programs in across the states, and that fits certain women. And for other women, it's going to be something completely different. Maybe it's the locavore. And so that there is no silver bullet with women in hunting, but it's the kind of suite of options and the suite of support networks and the suite of mentor programs that are really going to, I think, make a difference.
Yeah, and that's where I think conservationists and hunting advocates or others can learn a lot from the marketing and business world, right? Where, you don't sell a product by talking about it one way. You figure out all the different market segments that are out there, and you talk to them specifically about the thing that's in their way.
Yeah, but it's hard to talk about it in such a reductive fashion too. Hey, ladies, nobody's doing it. Hey, I mentioned this in another podcast. Some of the issues with R3 my lovely boss Steve Ranella said, like, you can't tell someone this is a declining activity. Come on, jump on board.
Yeah.
And when he said that, I was like, dude, that's one of the more powerful things around this idea.
Good descriptive norms right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm gonna start using these terms. Make it sound smarter. But yeah, and I think that's a big thing for us. Like, how do we first describe the plight that we're in and recognize that there is an issue here? There's, like you said, there's obvious reasons why we are where we are, societal and cultural reasons that kind of have driven us to where we are right now. We can all probably recognize them, but what do we do with them is the question.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this. I've been so I'm currently in the throes of working on the Montana State Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan.
Ooh.
I know, SCORP, as it's fondly referred
Riveting.
to.
Scorp.
Yeah.
SCORP.
Sounds like a small, ugly dog. Its name.
But SCORPs are needed across the 50 states to get LWCF stateside funds. And so it's an important document. And they're guiding documents across, they happen every 5 years. Montana's doing theirs. I've worked with Montana the last go around. And so it's a kind of a privilege and an honor to be asked again to help with it. And so I've been interacting with them, my little advisory group on that, and thinking a lot about how we talk about hunting in outdoor recreation. And a lot of times it's a small piece of these plans. And for me, I want to kind of elevate some of the R3 efforts and make sure that's incorporated into our state planning efforts. Likewise, after Libby, I've been talking to my buddy Greg Lemon, and
I know Greg.
You know Greg, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he told me to mention how dapper, handsome he was on a podcast.
Oh Lord,
I know.
He doesn't know we don't film them.
He's gonna laugh.
But we're not filming.
I know. But Greg and I, and same with colleague here, Josh Millspaugh, who's the Boone and Crockett chair here on UM's campus in the wildlife biology program. We've been thinking about how do we have all these kind of awesome groups popping up thinking about our three things. So we have, field to fork, we have, farm to table, we have all these cool, locavore, all these cool programs in all of these nonprofits or conservation organizations. And it seems like we're not even certain who's doing what. Mm-hmm. And we're not even certain if we're all pointed in the right direction. And so there is, I think, I'm hopeful that at least in Montana, we'll start thinking about them more comprehensively and holistically. Because I think once we can kind of organize all the efforts, we can point us all in the right direction and make sure we know what is it the left hand's doing with the right hand? No.
You're never good at those.
The hands are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm not good with
words. So bad with those.
Is that what it is? Idioms.
Idiom. Is it an idiom? Yeah.
Idiom idiot.
There's no way to know for sure.
I'm an idiom idiot. Yeah, that's right.
There's no way to know any of these things for sure. I think about this exact thing a lot. Like, is it a marketing issue? Is it a public relations issue with hunting? In fact, when I started this podcast, it was one of the first things I said. I think there's a PR issue with what we got going on. Because when I sat in the room with your students here, these members of BHA, you'd have no marketing problem or PR problem for hunting if you just talked to them.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
If you just spoke with them and asked them, is hunting good for your life, good for what you do, you would
no problem.
People would be lining up to take part in the world that they've created for themselves here at this college and in this town.
Did you have Lincoln's paper there? Because we have a colleague who wrote a paper kind of on this, kind of like we think of hunters as kind of like the rugged individual who forged their own path,
Yeah.
And sorry, it's not true. You were, raised in a family that supported, and you learned from a mentor, or you had resources to teach yourself, and while other people didn't, and you live in a town or a place where there's access, and you live in a country that, has embedded this into their wildlife management.
Yep.
And so, yeah, we can reduce it down to thinking about just participation by the individual, but there's this kind of whole kind of nested rings of support throughout society that constitute what they called the social habitat for hunting. And all of that has to be intact for the hunter to even be in a position to say yes and to go do that sport.
Yeah. Is there a place that we as a community can step in and maybe haven't stepped in in those rings of support where, maybe it's after folks leave the parental nest and get out into this, I think we lose most hunters. Our recruitment dies off mostly in this environment, in college, because people are out from under the guise of their parents and that influence. They're seeing all the world around them. Everything is new and exciting, and there's all these things they can do with their life. And hunting takes a lot of money, as your students were telling me earlier. Like, it's $500 for an out-of-state license. That's ridiculous. They can't afford that. It takes a lot of time and energy and equipment. And at that time in their life, they have little time, little energy, and not a lot of funds to buy things and go and do things. So I think that goes to your point.
Yeah.
But it's also an opportunity. Like, I think there are the folks who come out of families that are supporting hunting, and they may lose it in college, and maybe they come back to it later in life. But there's also a group of people who didn't have it, and I was in that category. Like, I wanted it, never had it growing up, and then as I was, in college and exposed to other people, that gave me the opportunity to learn from other people and to get some of the things that I couldn't get as a kid. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity at this age, to recruit people who didn't come out of hunting families into the sport.
Well, and it's interesting. I think it's been identified. So I'm part of this larger grant with 13 other states, and we are strategically implementing intro to hunting courses on campuses. And so we just did one 2 weekends ago up at the Boone and Crockett Ranch up on the
Heard about that, yeah. Heard about that earlier.
Silly. I was home with the kids.
Gender roles.
You gender rolled the shit out of that.
I had a blast.
You gender rolled yourself into some cartoons, didn't you? That's probably fun.
Well, it was hilarious. So we took, Josh Millspaw and I took the students up, and the ranch manager, Luke Coccoli, and Josh and one of Josh's students, Dan, did a lot of the session. I was fine deferring because I felt like I was completely like mom role. I was like love and belonging. I'm like, let's have who wants more spaghetti? Everyone get enough to eat? Please put granola bars in your pocket. But we had this awesome trip, and we like rolled out of UM in these like black Suburbans and went up, looked like secret kids on the school bus. We're like, are you Secret Service? We're like, no.
Hunters.
We're hunters.
Can't tell you.
Yeah. So we roll into the ranch, and I mean, we had a range of experience levels, and some folks had hunted before, and a lot of folks had never even, they didn't even know what to do. They never saw a gun. They've never thought about firearms. They've never thought about the regulations. And because it was free and because they just had to show up, it was really easy for them to do. And so this grant with 13 states, funded by AFWA, was the ticket for that. And so we partnered with FWP. We made sure we had a game warden there, kind of going over the regs with the students. He unrolled the new kind of display of FWP's regulations, which is an improvement. The students got a chance. Josh and Luke took them out to the range, and they had all these different like guns to try. And the students got to shoot clay pigeons. They just got to do some target practice. They got to just experience what it meant to be around firearms and have that safety around it. And then we did a bunch of, habitat and how do you look for deer and elk and things like that. Went around the landscape, and it was just really cool.
Yeah, and hearing about it afterwards, I mean, I think you reflecting on that there's different needs among different students. And so there's not just like the hunting recruitment program. Yeah. It's, we have people who know what they're doing and they're interested in these programs, but they need a different type of mentorship than the folks who can't spell hunting but are kind of interested. And
it was fascinating too. I mean, BHA in the student club here has done a phenomenal job, and they were the precursor for this course. They've been doing the Hunting for Sustainability program. And so a lot of the students who were in BHA club came and helped with the weekend. And so we were able to kind of start that mentorship model. What's really cool is that Josh is leading, and I'll assist a course in the fall where you get college credit to do hunting for sustainability.
Whoa.
And I know,
All right.
game on, game changer.
Game on.
And so it's a 400 level course where you can, it's kind of a la carte style. You can take 1 credit and do the weekend, or you can do 2 credits and write a paper in addition, or do a 3rd credit. And so we can have students kind of build their own program.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you keep coming back to that word complex. It's a very complex thing to do, to try to first dissect and understand these different groups of people and then come to some conclusion about how to create more hunters out of this gumbo of ingredients you're not really sure of.
Yeah. Well, it's cool to put some data to that too. Like we're kind of talking about lots of ideas that might work, and we need people that are getting creative and producing things and leading programs. But we also need to kind of learn as to what's working, right?
Yeah.
And so building in some metrics of success to those programs and figuring out, which approaches are working for which groups and how much, and which are worthy of investment and those sorts of things. That's where some of the data comes in.
Do you guys have, especially I think women hunters is probably the most interesting of all of those to me personally. Do you have suggestions for folks? Do you have things that, based on your works, are something we could all try and do, or give us hope?
Yeah, I'll get
ladies.
I think it, again, not all women are the same, but there are things that Josh and I were really clued into over the weekend that women do not just step up and say, yeah, I want to shoot that firearm. I want to take more runs at the clay pigeon, machine. And so just being aware of that, women might not volunteer, and they might need a little bit extra assistance to even just step up and do the task that we put forward. I really advocate, and this is just something over my years of working with high school through college, I advocate, and at least at this time, women-focused programming. And I think having college courses is awesome, but I would love to see a specific section just for women, and thinking about how that experience is just different than the experience of males. And it doesn't mean we always have to do it that way. It just is, I think women-focused programming is a thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we struggle with, are we pandering if we say, like, it's a women's hunt? Are we pandering? Like, do I say, please, everybody come over, it's only women, it's very important? Or would you treat everyone as equals and say, like, hey, everybody, it's a hunt for everyone? And I struggle with that. But after talking to you and talking to Hannah and some of your other female students earlier, they were, I think, because they're around you guys, more open to say, like, here's some of the things that I experienced that you'll never, like, the perspective you'll never have. I don't think that's very normal in the communication with folks. I think because they're exposed to you guys and social sciences and the things that you've talked about here, they're more willing to say the things they've said to me that were, when I go to the Sportsman's Warehouse, this is what I experience. When I go out in the field, this is what I experience. When I talk to other hunters, this is what I experience. And so it's cool that they were open enough to say that, but I think most female hunters probably aren't.
No, and it's amazing to me. Just, like the women, I mean, you met Madeline Damon, who is here, and she is, itching for like a woman to go hunting with.
She said that to me. Like, if I would just have, it's different with a woman. This is the way she put it. It's like, it's just a different interaction. It's a different way to approach the outdoors. And I'm like, okay.
Us guys like to think that we're helpful in some really unhelpful ways.
Yeah.
And over-explaining and being overbearing and jumping in.
Too much sometimes.
Damn you men.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're our own worst enemy.
Well, I mean, we've experienced that. I've rarely hunt with you now.
Thank God.
Thank God.
Marriage is safe.
Separation of church and state.
She hunts for family reasons and friends, and I hunt to get away from my family.
Oh my gosh.
I'm kidding.
And the data supports it.
Yeah. But it's just a different experience. Like I told him, he asked me one day what my hunt I was going away with a girlfriend on a hunting trip. He's like, what's your hunt? I don't even know what you do. He's like, saw me like packing like bottles of wine and goat cheese. And he's like, where are you going? And I was like, oh, we're going up to a cabin. I said, we get in the car and we literally do not stop talking. Even when we're hunting, we're still having a conversation somehow. And
weird.
And so it's just a very different social experience when it's women. And I'm feeling the need on our campus right now to, I think UM is poised to encourage hunting. Our President Bodner is interested in this. I see it up the ranks. Our dean, our director of wildlife, like we are interested in this and getting our students involved. And so I think my next step is working with Josh and figuring out how do we have a women's focused effort on our campus, at least at the college level.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody would ask me what's my opinion on recruitment, especially for female hunters or just around the bus, I just want more hunters. I don't care how we get it. And the folks like you that are actually thinking through the logistics of this and looking at the data and trying to paint a more accurate picture of exactly how to take that action is, I think, why it's valuable. Because if we have to have all women classes to get, I don't care. I would put no constraints on how we get new hunters in as long as we're speaking in, ethical terms and sustainable terms when we do it, which we are. And so I think most hunters would say the same thing. That would be my guess. It's like, I just want more people to enjoy the thing that I enjoy in a responsible and informed way. Do I care how we do it? As long as it's within those constructs, I don't. And so, bring on the solutions. Thing, and we'll put them out there.
Yeah, I think hunters need to think beyond hunters too, right? Like thinking about the broader social habitat for hunting, and the fact that hunting exists not because of hunters, but because all the 95% other people here in the country support hunting.
Yeah,
right. That the majority of people in this country, whether they hunt or not, support hunting, and doing what we can to represent the sport well, build connections and good communication about what we're up to with the broader public. So even if, as a hunter, I don't want hunting to get so popular. like a little bit more fine, but I like my spots.
The ultimate conundrum. Yeah. The ultimate conundrum.
Well, there's a difference with men and women. I was teasing. I had these students come up to me. I talk about hunting in my classes all the time, and these like 3 guys come up to me and they're like, Libby, we're trying to hunt in this one area and we don't know where to go. And I said, yeah. I was like, here's how I would tackle this particular block of land. And actually, if you're looking for something close to town, I would also go to this one particular spot that I just discovered, but you're going to have to hike, you're going to have to do this. And I told Alex this, and he's like, why would you say that? And I said, because I'm interested in getting people outdoors, and I'm interested in getting them in
all my spots. I find the spot, finally find a good spot close to town, and she goes blathering about it.
This is the perfect segue to a thing that I do on this show. I got a lot of heat for it out on the internet, but I'm going to keep doing it.
That's perfect.
Because
that means you're doing something right.
I know. A lot of heat. A lot of people are upset. It's called, now here's another part of this conversation. It used to be called, before I met you guys, it used to be called Hot Spot Cool Dude, but now,
problem.
Hot Spot Cool Person.
I think we can work on that.
Can we work on that? Hot Spot Cool Individual is where this actually is presented by First Light. They make lovely hunting clothing that we wear outside. So thank you, First Light. I'm going to try to convince you guys to give me a hunting spot, and you have to be very specific. Can't be like this mountain range or something like that. You have to give me a very specific hunting spot for all the listeners of this podcast that they would go to and what they would find there. And no, there's only been 2 guys that actually give me anything.
Oh,
yeah, I refuse immediately.
You refuse immediately.
Yeah. You're just, oh my gosh, this is the problem. Do you want to know what the R3 issue is no one's giving up their hunting spots.
That's what I'm saying. That's the bell of disagreement.
Yep.
It's the last hurdle that you have to cut. You have to clear yourself.
Find your own spots.
That's right.
R3
That's
is
exactly right.
Recruit your own spots.
Yeah.
Best. But yeah, if you guys want to give somebody, I got a dove spot, and I got like a kind of an elk spot thus far.
That's what you got?
That's all I got. And most people don't want to give spots. I don't understand it.
What's your N? How many have you asked?
It's like 8.
Yeah, well, 2 out of 8. That's not good.
Yeah, not a good data set.
But, 1's better than 0.
Yeah, so if you guys want to it could be longitude, latitude, that's fine. It could be the exact like trailhead.
We'll give some spots up back in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, we're okay.
I'm not saying we're this is private farm.
I mean, the place I have no qualms, and I go to a place that actually a lot of people use, and so I have no issues giving it up. We like to go up by Phillipsburg, and that's kind of a fun space for us as a family, and so we've actually been, there's the East Fork Reservoir up there, and then there's the next road, which is kind of where you go up to Moose Lake. And as you're going up to Moose Lake,
okay, remember that Moose Lake, everybody.
Moose Lake on the left in the woods is, I think it's
Alex is having
You think you got a lot of like angry calls on surveys?
yeah, wait for this.
Granite County is going to be after you.
It is true.
Hey, we're tearing down stereotypes over here.
That's right. This is for our three folks. It's called Carp Lake, and you just get high enough, and I've seen multiple elk in there. I've never actually taken a shot in there, but it's the thing I like about it is it's easy terrain, and so you're not having to kind of scale a big hill, although you do have to work a little bit, especially in deep snow, and there's some nice kind of paths. There's some nice, it's just a nice area in it. It's wooded. It has some lakes. It's pretty. It's
teeming with elk.
Teeming. Depending on
now people.
And now people.
Yeah,
that's
thousands.
right.
Tens of people that listen to
we
this.
should study this, though. We should say
This would be a good.
Yeah, like is this really a thing? If you talk about your spot, do people go there?
That's why I'm doing this, because I like
But
I
you
like
need
messing with
data.
people. Yeah, I do
Yeah.
need data, but I also like messing with folks.
know.
So that's two things I like: data and mess with folks.
You should say the next person you interview, and if they say they're not giving up their spot, you should have them come give them my number.
Give your number and call.
And
Maybe
then
you
I'll
could just
give 'em-
always call into this segment from now on.
And just
Like I have a
harass
guest,
them a little bit.
Like,
Did
what do you
just-
like, hunting?
Yeah.
Look at the data. 9%, 10% of women. Assholes. All right, the final segment here. It's called First Timers. Just a little bit. We'll get you out in an easy spot. This is presented by Federal Premium Ammunition. And I've been shooting turkeys in the face with their new TSS load here recently.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
Yep.
Works well. So
That's the
thank
one
you
with the
to them.
multiple shot size.
Yeah,
That's
it's
good.
third degree. Yeah,
Yeah.
different shot size. I mean, just poleaxing turkeys lately.
That's ridiculous.
Oh my gosh,
Yep.
just knocking them right off their feet. But this segment, so thank you, Federal Premium. This segment is where you're going to tell me your first. Like we'll go with. I'll let you pick the firsts. Hunting related firsts. I like to go with first rifle because I feel like that's always a big deal. And then maybe first animal you killed. That's also a big deal. So I'll let you, if you have a more interesting one, you can pick it. But let's try those two. Alex, give me your first rifle.
Well, my first rifle was a doe whitetail in Pennsylvania on opening day, which is an experience.
Dude, I'm from Western Maryland.
I mean, there's
know all about it.
What, like 1.2 million hunters or something? That number might be wrong.
The
but
Orange Army.
It is the pumpkin patch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had just switched over from I wear glasses, and I was sick of wearing glasses in the field, and I just got contacts like the week before. Brilliant planning.
Feeling slick. Yeah.
Yeah, and so. Yeah, I was up in north central Pennsylvania, and I was kind of posted outside this big thicket, and I got in there, way before light, and there's tons of deer all around. I'm just waiting for first light, and yeah, as it started getting lighter, I'm like squinting through my scope, and my contacts are just like itching my eyes. My eyes are watering and streaming. I can't see anything. I finally just take the contacts out and throw them on the ground. And right as kind of shooting light came up, there was this nice big doe headed into the thicket and pulled the trigger. Yeah.
How old were you?
I was actually in grad school. I didn't start
really? So
big game until grad school. So that was probably 2003. I don't know.
Were that solo? Were you used to the
24.
solo mission?
I was with a group of guys at a camp up there, but we had kind of split up and had our own spots that we'd scoped out. And
Oh yeah, I'm
yeah,
very familiar. I grew up in Western Maryland. Basically, I mean, we could walk to the Pennsylvania border And I can think of twice where bullets whizzed by my head on opening day.
Oh, yeah. It was
with close proximity to my dome.
15, 20 minutes before shooting light, the shooting begins, and it doesn't stop.
It doesn't stop.
Yeah.
A couple of times I killed small bucks that already had a few holes in them.
Yeah.
Been through a few things.
Slowed them down for you.
Slowed them down for him a little bit.
Yeah, it's the thing.
All right. Well, Libby, you have like a first. I think it would be breaking the gender stereotype if you told us about your first rifle that you were given or purchased or owned.
I purchased. I feel like it's very it's very unceremonial, like in a way. I started hunting birds when I met Alex in Pennsylvania when we first started dating, and I was like getting into hunting then, and he had 2 really cute dogs that became my dogs.
That's actually my sampling, not so much.
Bird dogs. Bird dogs.
Yeah. Bird dogs.
Classic play, Alex.
I know. I'm a runner, so they were like a perfect match to go out and just run with. And so when I moved to Montana, I was like, well, geez, I better get into big game hunting. And we literally were just driving. I think we were driving through Idaho or going to Spokane or.
Oh, yeah.
And I just said, let's pull over to Cabela's.
Doing it.
I'm doing it.
I like that. You're like, let's go.
I did. I literally was like, no time like the present. Let's just grab a rifle. And so I bought my Savage, and I've only shot one animal with it. And
one at a time.
One at a time. And I shot my first deer on some private land, and I was with another woman. And we both shot muleys that day, and we had help. We could have had help, but we were like, no, we're gonna gut these guys, and we're gonna do it all in the field. And we just started going to town, and the private landowner came over.
Seeing the hand waving.
Yeah.
The knives.
She's making like a stabbing motion. That is not the correct motion to be making for gutting a deer. I started stabbing it in the gut.
It stung. But the private landowner was like, he's like, oh, I have like all these men that come out and they never do this. We just pick it up and leave. And we just said, we just want to practice, doing it ourselves.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining me, and I appreciate your work here. And I would tell you, if it is any evidence of what your work turns out, the folks that sat in this room with me, your students, were unbelievable. These are exceptional humans.
They are.
The fact that they hunt is maybe tangential to like the fact that they seem to be their heads are firmly fixed on their shoulders.
Yeah, they are. We have outstanding students in all of our programs here on the College of Forestry. They're remarkable human beings.
Yeah.
Yep. That's why we do what we do.
Yeah.
Yep.
If it's any evidence to like the future of conservation and forestry and wildlife management, we'll be in good hands, at least around here.
Good.
So thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
That's it. That is all. Thanks for joining us this week, everyone. Thanks to Alex and Libby and Sam. Thanks to the Black Hills. Thanks to the University of Montana. I love this new format because it blends like the current, which is where I'm sitting right now in the Black Hills, with the evergreen, which is the interview with Alex and Libby. It's a cool way to combine where I am and where I've been and mix together topics that sometimes don't touch on each other, but almost always have some relationship. So I'm very happy with myself personally, the new format, but maybe you're not happy with it. Maybe you think it's terrible. So please write in and tell me. THC@themeateater.com. THC@themeateater.com. And that stands for the Hunting Collective, if you're wondering. Write into that email address. Tell me what you think about the new format. Ask questions, which we will answer on this program. And also, record yourself asking a question or making a comment about what you've heard on the podcast. Email it to me. You just do it right on your phone. Just go to notes, talking to the phone, and then hit send to the email at thc@themeateater.com. You do that, I will listen to it, and if it's good enough, if it's under 2 minutes, it's real clean, we'll put it on the air. So hopefully we can, in the months and weeks to come here, start putting a bunch of those together and packaging them for you as another part of the new format of the podcast. So please write in, THC@themeateater.com. And what else will I say? I'll say that there's a video out there. Hopefully you'll go watch. You go to the Meat Eater YouTube channel. You also can get there through the Meat Eater's social of Steve and Ranella turkey hunting. And he's hunting with me. And it's one of my favorite turkey videos. I think it's got a lot of, for those of you that aren't turkey veterans, it's got a lot of educational stuff in it. You'll learn how a hunter talks to a turkey and how a turkey talks to a hunter. It's a huge production for us. We worked a long time on it, so it's important that you go watch it. So go to the YouTube channel for Meat Eater and look for Steve and my latest turkey hunt. You're going to love it, I promise. Or if you don't love it, write into thc@themeateater.com. I'm happy to read your opinions either way. So, with all that done, and with this episode done, I'm off to hunt more turkeys, and we'll see you next time on the Hunting Collective. Enjoy, once again, old number 7.
Jack Daniels, old number 7. Tennessee whiskey got me drinking in heaven, and angels start to look good to me. They're gonna have to deport me to the fiery deeps. Oh, to the fiery deeps. Drinking in the fiery deeps. Oh, to the fiery deeps. Drinking in heaven.
You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins. Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.